everybody. I'm Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in the Denver office. With me, Mr. Peter Thomas in
Hey,
Chicago.
and welcome to Chicago again. It's been a real interesting week. A lot of what we've been talking about, the yin and yang, back and forth. Very interesting in the physicals. A lot of support coming in. A lot of cash came in. For example, we had the silver ETFs, which have been kind of the dog of the whole group, right, Pete? They've
Yeah.
just been dragging along, and all of a sudden we have 15 days in a row where people are pumping money into them. So it's been a very, very active week.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week that silver was probably due to play a little bit of catch up, and
You
it did
did,
it
yeah,
did that very thing this week. So
yeah,
let's look back at what happened last week. Um, Solid week for the precious
yeah,
metals across the board.
absolutely,
Gold was up a little bit more than 2%, set a new 7.5 plus new year high.
yeah. That
And
was impressive.
right,
Yeah,
silver though up almost 8% last week.
today was just awesome. It looked like a rocket ship, and
Close solid.
yep, absolutely. And bid. And oh, by the way, we've been telling you and telling you and telling you, we're going to keep it up. Try to find some physical. It's just people are snapping up anything that's out there. And it's the same way this week. And I'm sure as I'm looking into next week, I would say it's going to end up the same. I had a very long talk with the CEO of Argent Metals, probably one of the best metals dealers in the world by far, and of the highest integrity that dealt with him for decades. And I said, "Oh, you're going to be going fishing, or where are you going to go in June?" And he goes, "We canceled all our vacations." I said, "What?" He goes, "June's dead. Nothing goes on in June." He goes, "Yeah, I know. We canceled all our vacations. We are selling more stuff. We're thinking about canceling the entire staff's vacation because we're so busy." And I was like shocked. I mean, I'm talking decades. I've never seen this happen.
Right. It's as companies try and get their supply chains back together, there's been a lot of
Right.
movement across the markets in general. People that suddenly can't get metal are changing their relationships and so forth, and some of that has certainly worked to our benefit, and probably Argent's as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to continue. And so you're right. The summer doldrums that frequently befall the metals market
Right.
may not happen this year.
I mean, it's generally right about now I start breaking out my scuba gear and cleaning up the tackle, because it's time to go fishing and hit the water. And I'm not going anywhere. I mean, this thing is rocking. And when you see V formations, such as we discussed before, similar with copper, when copper looked like a Roadrunner cartoon, was with the Wile E. Coyote holding the anvil going off the cliff. The rally back was just as violent, and in silver did the same thing. So we're seeing finally real acceleration, let's call it that, and as they generate a flow into the safe harbor.
Yeah. So the gold silver ratio, just to kind of again illustrate
Yeah,
the
right.
fact that silver is really playing some catch up again. Gold silver ratio was down almost 5% last week, trading with a 104 handle again. And you may recall it wasn't that long ago, a matter of weeks, that we were up around 129.
Yeah, and we discussed that, and I'm really glad you brought that point up, because anybody who's following that has made a lot of money in that spread.
Right. There's
Yep.
been, and this has gone on for years, and it hasn't really panned out. But people have been talking about reversion to the mean in the gold silver ratio for a very long time, and
What is that,
sort of
about 80? It's about 80 historically.
historically there was a long period of time where it was sort of 18 to 25, and then
Yeah.
over the last decade or so, I think it kind of moved up to around 40.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Now, with that 129 high, the mean may be, in the 60s, maybe low 60s or so.
Okay.
But
Okay.
still, if we revert to the mean, that's still a pretty darn impressive move, and that's going to be silver is going to be on fire if that happens.
I mean, I'd love to see it back in the 20s again. I would not be surprised, and it's overdue. And if we continue to see shortages, we're going to get to the 20s, and it's not that far away. And the momentum has started. Let's see if it follows through. Like that is always the question. What can this coming week do as they continue to throw trillions of dollars at the economy, and they seem to be throwing the money at, let's say, sillier and sillier things. It's getting a little interesting
Well,
now.
you got to spread the wealth
That's
as you're spreading the stupidity, I suppose. Let's
I,
continue with the rest of the PMs
you
for
bet.
last week.
Yeah.
Platinum up about 4%. Um, really strong close on Friday again. Uh, Closed right at $800, and so
Yeah.
that little double top that I was a little bit worried about last
Right.
week. I don't know if I call it negated yet. 795 to 797 was that formation on the chart.
We're
But
seeing a little platinum coming out of Russia right now. That tends to take the pressure off. It's sort of like a spigot that they control, and they let. And Putin's, like I always said, the best metal trader in the world is Putin, no matter what anyone says. And he sort of dialed it back a little bit, let a little metal out, and it continued to rally. So again, the master was able to sell on into strength. It worked very, very well for him. So
right.
we'll see if that top is continues to hold it.
Yeah, if we see a little upside follow through this week above 800, we see the 100-day and actually the 100-day and the 100-week kind of
Yeah,
converge at the 850 level. So that would
yeah,
be
that would
kind of
be
an
interesting.
appealing level
Yeah,
to go
absolutely.
to.
What did you see
Palladium,
on Palladium? Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty steady.
yep.
Um, Down about 0.6% last
All
week.
right.
And things have sort of reversed. There's a little bit of a double bottom pattern on the Palladium chart. So I don't know if that means that this corrective consolidative phase is done yet. Again, we need to see some
Tough
upside
call.
follow through
Tough
to
call. I
confirm
can
that.
tell you, on our side of the fence here, on the physicals, we talk to our scrappers. Our scrappers are do AutoCADs and from the catalytic converters, and we're seeing good demand on the product. The trucks are rolling. So on the ground, product is still being purchased. So, maybe we will see a little bottom here, similar to what we saw in copper, which was the trucks are rolling steadily and seeing good prices before the charts reflected it. So this very well could be what you're talking about, Pete, a little bottom in here.
Right. And so we were pretty optimistic on copper last week when it closed
Yep,
above 240.
yep.
Didn't get the upside follow through though, and we were down 3% this this past week.
Right, right.
It
Well,
was an inside week though, so it traded within the previous week's range. Copper is such a hard one sometimes.
it's a very skittish market. I think the biggest thing was that Asian auto sales were down another 8.5%, which is a staggering number. And remember, 40 to 80 pounds of copper go into every car you're looking at, whether it's a regular car or whether it's an electric car. Some of the electric cars will go up to 120 pounds of copper. So there's a lot of usage for copper. Now, the Mexican manufacturing plants are coming online. They announced they are ready to rock and roll June 1st. So we'll see some demand there. The question becomes how much copper is on hand. There's a number of Central and South American copper mines that can supply them, but how much is there? That's going to be the big question.
Yeah, my sense was that there was a pretty big inventory build in copper in the sort of the early stages of the COVID crisis. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Right. We Singapore copper investment this week. Uh, I like the Singapore numbers. They're usually a little closer to the truth, if you know what I'm saying. We always take a little numbers from China with a little grain of salt when they come from the Central Committee. But their scrap sales are going well, and they are buying some product, and for the first time, we've seen a little bit of inventory increase there. So they're getting product, they're buying product, and they're obviously in anticipation of doing something. And I would bet that it's going to be electric cars.
Right.
Yep.
Well, the data that came out last week were grim as we
Oh,
expected.
yeah.
Uh, Evidence of disinflation. CPI was down 0.8%. PPI was down a whopping 1.3%. So the producers are really getting hit.
Yeah.
That brings PPI to negative 1.2 year on year. So that's pretty grim. And my concern is that it's going to make the Fed push even more on that
On
rope.
the negative side, yeah, it looks to me like we're still, as we talked about almost 2 months ago, we're still in lockstep with the BOJ, Bank of Japan, and their centralized mean. 21 years they stayed at a negative basis, worked for them. I guess we think it's going to work for us. So
Well,
it's a tough call.
yeah, we'll get to Chairman Powell and some of the other Fed speak in just a second. But
Yeah,
retail sales came out on Friday. It was down 16.4%, which was
was
quite a bit worse than expected.
about
Ex,
almost double,
yeah,
almost
ex
double.
auto was down 17.2%.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then industrial production was down 11.2%. And Cap Ute has fallen all the way to 64.9%. So
What do we do?
the evidence is mounting. And
Well, the
so,
evidence mounting, we need to go back to work, and everybody
well,
knows that.
yeah. No, I think everybody does know that.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the big factors of last week was Chairman Powell spoke, and he had a pretty grim
He
assessment
he had
of
his sad cap on when
recovery.
he came out.
He
Yeah,
was not a happy camper.
and today I watched POTUS speak about 1 o'clock Central Time, and I have to say that he was pretty upbeat. He said, "Look at, I expect this next quarter, a lot of you are going to be very surprised with the number I'm seeing." And the numbers were just given to him by the large council meeting he had with all the CEOs of the major firms. I mean, they all sat down at the White House and crunched numbers, and he came out and said, "Hey, I'm a businessman. I know what I'm doing. I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm telling you, it's going to be a little better than you think."
Yeah,
So let's hope he's right.
I think there are some people that believe that we're going to return to growth in the second half,
Yep,
but I think
there's
we're
a lot of
gonna,
people believe that,
yeah,
but I think it depends almost on. I mean, right now they're trying to lock people down in California almost to the next election, and then have them send in paper ballots.
right,
Really?
yeah.
It's there's a lot
I
of
wonder,
strange stuff going on here.
yeah, I wonder if Powell had his sad hat on, as you said, just because
Yeah,
he's hoping for more fiscal stimulus so that the Fed doesn't have to do as much. But I mean, there is a veritable alphabet soup of lending facilities that the Fed is working right now that's going to amount to trillions of dollars. On top of the trillions of dollars worth of fiscal stimulus, there's another $3 trillion package in the House right now
okay.
that
Yeah, that's
they're
not gonna
voting on.
pass. It's gonna
The
get vetoed.
Yeah, the
It'll get
Senate,
vetoed.
there doesn't seem to be the support for that in the Senate.
No, no,
Too
it's not gonna happen.
too much pork in that one, it seems.
Well, I think the interesting thing that we need to mention is the fact that the dispensation through the government agencies is working far better than a lot of people thought it would. A lot of people are getting desperately needed checks in the mail when they're supposed to get them. And we're good job, guys. I mean, really. I mean, for me to say the government did a good job at what handing out money, I mean, they did. And
They got it out fast, that's for
they
sure.
they really did, and I hope we don't need to see that another $3 trillion get pumped into that, because it looks to me like everybody's ready to go, from sports to car manufacturing to
Bring
even
back
durable
baseball.
goods. Yeah,
Nolan Arenado
Cubs fan heard in the background.
Nolan Arenado of the Rockies. We negotiated a deal. Let's play ball.
All right, baby.
Love
Hey,
it,
you know
Nolan.
what? We don't need people in the stands. We can play baseball out there, and we can watch it, and it'd be fun. the roar off the crack of the bat, the fun stuff like that that gives it that baseball feel will be gone, but at least we'll get to see him
As a
play.
former movie guy, Pete, they just put the sound effects in.
Ah, you're referring to the Kellys.
The Kellys, that's what I was looking
That's
for.
the word you're looking for. The
Yeah,
Kellys do extraordinary work, and
exactly.
they are definitely compensated well because it's a high skilled job. I've seen them do stuff. I remember I was doing something, and the guy went, "Oh, that's a cable shot," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, we need a sound effect for that." And we were crashing a car, and he went over to the cable that supported a telephone pole, and he
Yeah,
cracked it with a wrench, and they recorded it, and it made this great sound for this crash. I was like, wow, okay.
high
Yeah,
technology.
Kelly guys are very cool people. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So we'll hear again from Powell this week. He talks before the Senate Banking Committee on Tuesday about COVID-19 response. So we'll see if anything new and exciting. But I will tell you
Yeah.
that last week he sort of blew off the whole notion of negative rates. Now
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me in the least. I sort of still think we're going to get there. But he was pretty dismissive of going negative on Fed funds.
Well, it's a tough call. It's, you know what? It's going to depend on how much they throw in to the center of the pile here. And if it gets vetoed, he won't have to go negative. You know, he could tighten it up a little bit and say, "Hey, I don't have as much as I thought, and you want it, you're going to have to pay a squelch more for it," which is is good as far as I'm concerned because I don't want us running in the negative.
Right. And
But
I
as a
don't
gold
either.
guy, it doesn't hurt us one
Well,
bit.
I think that a lot of the Fed policy of the, well, certainly of the last decade and now accelerating once again over the last 3 months or so has been very supportive to gold.
Yeah,
And people realize that, that with rates this low and debt and deficits as high as they
yeah.
are, there's going to have to be some expansion of the money supply.
Oh no,
And,
there's no
and
question. Which is why we're seeing Zaner Precious Metals website selling as much metal as it is. People are coming in buying it, and they're buying it at a much higher volume than we've seen. And our hedgers, who from scrap yards to bullion dealers and coin dealers, are all on the right side of this thing right now, and it's been working out well for everybody. The only question we have right now is for our scrappers is, hey guys, call in. Let's go over how much inventory you got before we start hedging because this thing could pop a little more and you could get exposed to a little upside damage. So I want my copper guys to call in. Everybody else, business as usual.
Right. Well, if Chairman Powell is a sad sack again this week, it'll probably tend to be supportive to the gold market. Also, this week, a lot of housing data. We have got housing starts, existing home sales, and the Case-Shiller index coming out. So we'll wait and see what the impact of the crisis has been on the housing market.
Yeah, I think the thing that's going to be the most interesting on the case Schiller is going to be what we're going to see. I think out of all of them, really, is going to be apartment building. They use a tremendous amount of metal to build an apartment building, and if that number is up, it's going to be real favorable to us.
Right.
Yep.
And another thing we're going to be watching pretty closely is heightened tensions between the U.S. and China. There's a
Glad you
there's
mentioned them.
a fair amount of blame game going on with
Ooh.
regards to the COVID crisis.
Oh
Certainly,
yeah. Why did
um,
you? We mean why did you allow people to get on international flights when you were closing your country down? That seems to be the question right now.
right, right. And so as uh, I think the Huawei thing, kind of extends back beyond that. But it seems like they're going to cut off semiconductor supply to Huawei. And then the
Yep.
Chinese are talking about retaliating against our technology companies, Apple and
How?
Cisco,
They'll
Boeing as
just
well.
move. They'll just move. They don't understand. I mean, they just talked about the idea of lowering and making and you and I discussed this 2 weeks ago. The best thing they could do is walk in and go, you want to move back to America, flat 10% across the board, no more taxes. That's it. Move on in, guys, and we will subsidize you at that level. and set a date. We'll give you 3 years, 4 years, whatever it happens to be. China will be in big trouble, big trouble.
Right.
You know.
Destabilizing a giant though in that region may have implications as well, though. So
Well,
gotta factor all that
we
in.
tried it with Japan when we cut off their oil supply, and they ended up bombing Pearl Harbor. That didn't work out too well.
Yeah, that's sort of my point. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
saw it quite clearly.
it's a complicated chess game for
Yes, it
sure.
is. Yes, it is. And it's not like the old days with a flat board. They're playing three-dimensional, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with
So,
that, let's
yeah.
wrap up this session, and we will wish you all a wonderful week of trading, and have a great week.
And thank you for dropping in. Give us a like. Please follow us and stay healthy.